And then you write, for the first time since George and I had gotten serious, I was looking at the possibility that the man who had always had my back might one day stab me in it. Oh, that must have been awful.
It's really sad, but it's also very confusing. And George then deleted that tweet and a bunch of other tweets and didn't tweet for a while. I go through that in the book. It's difficult to remember every move and an occurrence at the time. So I tried to go back, Megyn, and just hook together the facts of when these tweets were coming out. But 5 days before that, 4 or 5 days before that tweet, George had put out a public statement, not on Twitter, that he was withdrawing his name from consideration for the Senate confirmed position at the Department of Justice, big job to head up the civil division. And he said very clearly in that statement, anybody can pull it up right now, I have it in the book, Megyn. He just says, President Trump, thank you for nominating me. I think Kellyanne and I just think at this time, it's hard for both of us to have these jobs. And then he very explicitly says, I continue to support the work of your administration. And of course, my wonderful wife, Kellyanne. That is days before this tweet. And so I know the best man from his wedding talked to him, you shouldn't do that. He deleted some tweets. And I think people should know that in the year of the tweet, 2016, known as the year of the tweet, George Conway sent 0 tweets. That's why I said to Sean Spicer, that's not possible. George doesn't tweet. I really thought it was like one of those fake accounts or somebody had hacked him. There was no way I thought it was him. And then he didn't answer the phone. I was trying to verify whether or not it was him. So it was all very confusing and ultimately unsettling and a little embarrassing for me to understand why that was happening in such a public way. It was just not George. And I think, look, we all do things that are out of character. There's no question. But this went on and on then for the next several years. And the mainstream media could not get enough of it. Right. And they eventually went from covering George's tweets to having George cover everything from impeachments. And he did have experience in impeachments, but only because he had helped impeach Bill Clinton. They had him on talking about how to be a campaign manager. Then he's meeting with somebody about, he's a rent-a-quote from the New York Times on COVID. It's just they couldn't get enough of him. And make no mistake, he is mentioned most in the media, particularly at that time for years, as, quote, Kellyanne Conway's husband. Now, that's fascinating to me. And even on The View, you had John McCain's daughter talking incessantly about Kellyanne Conway's husband. Get it? And so I think we all need to see, from where we've come, how we're known, et cetera. I'm very happy to stand on my own. But folks, thought that was then a proxy to dip into my marriage and then my children, and it was not. And Megyn, have you seen these people? You're talking about very thin-skinned, terrified, troubled people living in glass houses.
Yes. I love that point in the book. First of all, the Jersey girl does not sit quietly when people attack her, and she does not hold back. And one of the themes of the book, as I read it, was it didn't matter whether it was a media person, someone in the White House, someone in the president's family. You give as good as you get, and they're going to get an elbow in the face if they come for you. And I like that about you, because not a lot of women have it, Kellyanne. But you don't suffer fools.
I never go first, though. I never draw first blood.
No. I know that.
Blood. But when it's drawn upon me, I'm going to get the last word.
I'll give one example. There was an example you talk about in the book where Chris Wallace tries to get into your marriage. It's like you're giving him a political interview and he wants to get into your marriage. And I understand water cooler people talk. My God, the husband's tweeting against the wife's boss. This is weird. But like, to ask you, who are not a political candidate, who work for a president, about your marriage, because I never did that. Honestly, I was on the air when this stuff was happening. I remember thinking this is very inappropriate, not to mention what they did to Claudia. Totally inappropriate by any measure, your daughter. But I just thought that, to your point, people have they live in glass houses, especially news anchors. And so Chris Wallace comes for you asking about your marriage. And you said something like, oh, what are you, Oprah now?
Exactly. Although she might be too classy to ask. And also, he prefaced it, Megyn, by saying, my viewers want me to ask you. And it turns out his viewers did not want him to ask that, because he got excoriated for the rest of the day, I'm told, by people who look at social media. He got excoriated to the point where the next morning he texted me, he's like, are we okay? I didn't respond because I don't think he was okay in that moment. Look, that's just for kicks and clicks. And it's whether it's Beto O'Rourke yesterday, Chris Wallace in the interview, other people trying to it's people looking for kicks and clicks. And we, God forbid, we can't do it under any circumstance, but to use my marriage. And I didn't go back at Wolf Blitzer. I didn't go back at Dana Bash. I didn't go back at Chris Wallace about their own personal lives. Yeah. Should I have, Megyn? I guess I could have. I know a thing or two about them, but you know what? You got to keep it classy. You can't always respond in kind and put yourself in the gutter with them. Just can't.
I know it's very tempting to do so, but you didn't. But you did fight. I mean, you didn't go low, but you did punch back in the face, which I thought was rhetorically, which I think is appropriate. You didn't let the people get away with it who thought your marriage was fair game when you were on to talk about the president and the White House and policies, and it was just low. It just felt skeevy to me when I saw people doing it. And I understand it's interesting on a water cooler level. That doesn't mean it raises to the level of when confronting Kellyanne Conway about the White House and the policy, you have the nerve to ask her about something that personal. And the only reason I'm asking you about it now is because you wrote all about it in your book. But like, I wouldn't have done that. You know, I mean, I would never ask you about something like that unless you said you wanted to talk about it. So back on that subject.
Okay, George was never asked about me. He was never asked about me, Megyn, which is really the rich, ironic point from the media.
Is that right?
I'm the one with the big job in the White House who's coming on TV in my professional capacity as senior counselor to the president with something to say. He's going on as Kellyanne Conway's husband. They give him an area and expertise. George is a brilliant person. I'm sure he has plenty to say. But he made a deal with his friend Jake Tapper and others. Don't ask me about Kellyanne. So it's really, I mean, there's not even bias. It's like a quadruple standard. It's like the woman in the White House who's here to talk about things in the White House is going to be asked about her husband, who's known as Kellyanne Conway's husband. But Kellyanne Conway's husband cannot be asked about his wife, who works in the White House. Follow?
Wow. Remember when Hillary Clinton was asked, and I thought rightfully responded about something when she was running, and they were like, well, what does your husband think? And to her credit, she was like, what does my husband think? What? My husband's not running. I'm running. Well, you want to know what I think? I'll tell you. And I was like, that's a good moment for her. But it's the same. It's like, why did they feel so comfortable asking you about George's opinions? These same anchors who cut a deal with him not to ask him about you felt totally comfortable asking you about him. And he's not even in the White House, right? It's like they're just trying to sow discord. It's juicy. They, like you say, they want clicks, and it's uncomfortable. It was uncomfortable for me to watch. It's one of the many reasons we have to hate the media. But back on the other subject, which is more important, and that's you, because I find this fascinating as a professional woman, like what you were dealing with, because there's a lot of pressures in the White House. It's not an easy job. And you're dealing with, young children, which is not an easy job either. And you write about George and the love that he was developing for Twitter. I think a lot of people have seen this happen, whether it's a spouse or a child or themselves. And you say you were not prepared for the cult of George Conway. He would be the biggest get of the Never Trump movement. Very true. But the amount that he was getting drawn into the tweets, the ferocity, you write, of his tweets accelerated. Clearly, you write, he was cheating by tweeting. I was having a hard time competing with his new fling. Explain that.
Yeah, and I go on to say, Megyn, and why would I? His new fling is called Twitter, and she's not even hot. She has no personality. And, that's my tongue-in-cheek way of revealing what was very painful. I think that our disagreement is not really about Donald Trump. Obviously, he can have his opinion. I can have my opinion about Donald Trump. This is America. I think the disagreement is how we spend our time. And I just felt he was increasingly spending his time on Twitter. He left the law firm. He, was doing the Lincoln Project, I guess a little bit, although the founders of the Lincoln Project now go after him and say, I hardly knew him. Okay. I think it helped them a great deal, the sort of washed up shop worn consultants who had never won a presidential race to speak of as campaign manager, to have Kellyanne Conway's husband involved in that. But I felt I wish George had owned it more. In other words, I didn't have him on Twitter notifications. I didn't see what he was doing. Plenty of people were following him and then putting it right in front of the president, thinking it would hurt me professionally and personally, wound me personally. Shame on them. But I wasn't paying attention to everything he was doing. I was very busy with my job. And of course, my first and most important job is mom. But why didn't he just own it? Why not just say to me, I've got an op-ed coming out in the Washington Post tomorrow. I'm polishing off my op-ed in the New York Times while you're up helping 4 kids with homework or doing the dishes. Why not just say, you're not going to believe the ad we're coming out with the Lincoln Project? Like, don't I deserve advance notice and some transparency? Why would I find out when everybody else did? Or frankly, Megyn, after editors at those newspapers or Lincoln Project people found out, why would I find out after the fact? Is that what I deserve? And is that what I deserve because of where I work?
Take a moment and think of the best burger you've ever had. Picture it fondly. Imagine that first mouth-watering bite and then throw it in the trash. Why? because you're about to have a new favorite burger. I'm talking about the American Wagyu burgers from Good Ranchers. The only thing that can make them better is that you get 2 pounds of them free with my code Megyn. You have a problem. I have a problem. We all have a problem, and it's a meat problem. The problem is that 85% of the grass-fed beef in stores and online is imported from overseas. Don't pay a premium for low-quality foreign meat. Good Ranchers sells 100% American meat and delivers it to your door for a great price. Good Ranchers helps solve your meat problem with free shipping. Go to goodranchers.com/Megyn now. Good Ranchers, American meat delivered. And if you don't buy the meat in your house, tell the person who does to check out Good Ranchers. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.